Good evening. I'm Mayor TJ Cawley. Welcome to the May 19th Town Council Work Session. This is our third virtual meeting and is being facilitated electronically via Teams live meeting to maintain the safety of town residents, staff, and the town council while following guidelines related to social distancing and public gatherings. This meeting is being streamed simultaneously on both the Town of Morrisville Facebook page and the Town of Morrisville website. On Thursday, May 21st, the plan is to upload the video of this meeting to www.townofmorrisville.org/government/live-video. A link to this page will also be placed on the Town of Morrisville social media pages. Please visit www.townofmorrisville.org for updates regarding future town council meetings, or feel free to email townclerk@townofmorrisville.org with any questions. We are now at item 2, roll call. I will now recognize Town Clerk Eric Smith to conduct roll call of council attendees. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Cawley. All right, Mayor Cawley.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Fender.
Present.
Councilmember Garamella.
Present.
Councilmember Rao.
Present.
Councilmember Robati.
Present.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson.
Present.
All members are present.
Thank you, sir. We are now at item 3, action items, and I will entertain a motion to invoke Rule 19 to conduct this meeting virtually. I recognize Mayor Pro Tem Liz Johnson.
I'll make a motion to invoke Rule 19.
I have a motion to invoke Rule 19. I recognize Councilmember Steve Rao.
I second it.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye when Eric Smith does the roll call vote for this motion, please.
Councilmember Robati.
Present. Aye, sorry.
Councilmember Garamella.
Aye.
Councilmember Rao.
Aye.
Councilmember Fender.
Aye.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Cawley.
Aye.
The motion to invoke Rule 19 passes unanimously.
Thank you, sir. We are now at item 4. We have one discussion item this evening. I'll recognize Jeannie Hooks, Assistant to the Town Manager, to conclude the presentation of the FY 2021 proposed annual operating budget. Ms. Hooks.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the time to complete our final few special budget topics before turning over to Council for deliberations and discussion. Please keep in mind or keep handy your budget tools as we review. That's your abbreviated budget report, your presentation, and then, of course, your frequently asked questions that were delivered to you yesterday or sent to you via email yesterday. We will continue to work to gather and actually work on answering any outstanding questions as we go. And I just want to make a comment that I also have added any budget portal comments that were received, and the communications department and myself are also going to try to capture anything that we see through social media outlets and any emails that are sent to us, and just add some depth to the feedback that you're receiving. So another reminder is also to please use your chat box to indicate if you have questions or comments as we go. And Mayor, I only really have just a few remaining slides, and I'll probably ask really at this time to allow me to go through all of them and have questions at the end, if that's okay.
I believe that's reasonable.
So
excuse me. Can anybody hear Jeannie?
it muted automatically. Sorry
Okay,
about that.
all right, there you
Yeah.
go. Now you're back. Thank you.
So did everyone hear about the questions and comments at the end?
Yes,
No.
Jeannie, we heard that.
Okay. I just want to make sure, where do I need to start over? So let's begin. As I mentioned, we have indicated that work and service expectations really continue even through challenging times. And the proposed budget initiatives really work to stay focused on meeting those service needs that are growing and actually trying to stay committed to the things that you've already invested in. So with these next few slides that talk about budget highlights, I will touch on a few of those as we go. I'm not going to read over slide for slide, but I'm going to touch on a few items that I just want to highlight. You can follow along or actually reference, more importantly, the details of the budget priorities that are outlined in your budget report starting on page 29. So let's talk about current and future needs. With a growing workforce and need from added programs, you need people and space really to accomplish these goals. And another thing to think about as we built this budget was really retaining that knowledge that we have, that knowledge base, and that continuity of service is very important priorities really for any organization to keep in mind with a budget. Security is always paramount, especially these days, not just for our facilities, but really safeguarding our network environment and our data. That becomes paramount in trying to find opportunities and funding means to be able to do that effectively and keeping up with that technology curve. As with any growing community, simply put, resources are required to really continue our good work as a community grows and expands. An organization with a growing population and really added service expectations, you cannot avoid expanding operations at some point without really limiting services. Oops, I went way too fast on that. So this year proposes a unique opportunity for fulfilling mobility solutions, and that's with the public transportation smart shuttle service. This is a new service, and it does add to future annual operating costs. Now, I think over the next 5 years, we will receive a 50% matching grant over some period of time. This is, as I said, a new opportunity, and the grant comes from, I believe, Wake Transit Community Fund. The proposed budget offers a means to continue our work towards becoming a smart city and other technology innovations and upgrades. Again, staying ahead of the technology curve is a very important initiative. It also focuses towards sustainability efforts to really support energy efficiencies and leveraging innovative solutions to protect our environment. This really starts with a designated position, perhaps, and even the development of a comprehensive plan that really helps guide our work and investment in this area, as well as some pilot projects, initiatives, such as the any kind of solar initiative or composting activities, and the flood sensors that we're actually looking to put into Cedar Fort Community Park will help create some automation. As always, investing in our future community needs will continue to be an important goal of the town of Morrisville. And while we might not be going forward with a bond referendum in 2020, there is opportunities and work that is still ahead of us in 2021 for continuing activities on those projects that you've already, as council, elected to put aside funds to continue that work and advance them and prepare them for a future bond referendum. Additionally, this budget continues to focus on creating advocacy and partnership. That's actually a very important strategic goal of town council and the town to continue to enhance our access and really our engagement through improved graphic designs, video tools, and really just access to open data information. We're taking huge steps this year, and we'll continue that in fiscal year 21. Enhancing the culture and quality of life elements can be realized with added programming for cultural activities and maximizing our use of our food hub, such as arts and crafts, fairs, music and entertainment. These are types of examples that this budget might offer to achieve those goals. It remains important to continue our commitment to realizing the senior center and the expanded programs potentially offered there. It also follows for the opportunity really to expand preschool programs and backfilling the space that the senior programs currently occupy at Cedar Fork Community Center. And when they move out, we'll have space to expand our youth programs. And Morrisville's always enjoyed a very strong following in that particular area. Additionally, planning for the renovated facility and reopening MAFC is a huge opportunity for Morrisville to really glean some enhanced programs and celebrate the community with the community this new space that we have, a new opportunity. This budget also addresses really critically needed equipment replacements. While we did have to make hard choices, we did have to put some of them on hold. But the most important items that relate to emergency equipment replacements are really considered a necessity and included in this budget. Additionally, the budget really continues our commitment to provide additional funding for proactive preventative maintenance of our roadways. We established that initiative and commitment a long time ago, and we want to continue that, as well as taking care of our facilities and the assets we own. So this was not an easy budget by any shape. There were necessary trade-offs with putting needs above wants and a budget that had really an impacted budget capacity that we had to work within. There were difficult decisions that we had to make to reduce or defer approximately $3 million in requested or planned needs. While these are common tactics and budget tools employed by most municipalities during uncertain economies, it essentially delays needed elements that only prolongs the inevitable really, and it likely costs us more in the future. It is possible at mid-year, if conditions allow post-audit, it's recommended that we evaluate the first and second quarters, but we might have an opportunity to advance some of these deferred items if conditions in the economy look different than they do today. So on page 42, the town manager has offered some scenarios that really illustrate ways that council may reduce the proposed tax rate by 1 and 2 cent increments. If this becomes the direction that council as a whole wishes to move towards to adopt a budget, staff can adjust and prepare a budget accordingly. We do suggest that council allow staff to really recommend items that we think could effectively be removed and rebalance the budget appropriately within revenue sources, all sources, based on council's policy interest that you will be providing us, hopefully starting tonight in your discussion. What does that perhaps look like? A question to ask yourself is, what does council desire as a budget policy as a whole? What is council looking for? What do you value? Those are important things to put on the table early so that each of you know what the other is thinking, and then council and staff can have those kinds of conversation and begin to formulate really what your adopted budget would look like. So fund balance is our primary reserve, or what we call a savings account, if you were to relate that to your own personal life. Fund balance is significantly important to cash flow needs, as many of our revenues, they don't materialize until really the second and third quarter of the year. And what am I referring to mostly? It's ad valorem. The bills go out, I think, in July, they're past due in September-ish, and or due in September, past due the first of the year. You don't really see those materialize until the latter part of the second quarter and the first part of the third quarter. That's your largest source of revenue. Fund balance is measured at year end and is calculated within that year as cash and investments minus liabilities and deferred revenues. Our policy is to have a fund balance that falls between 25% and 45% as a percentage of expenditures in that year. We have planned to use less than 3% of expenditures, and that's intentional to safeguard the remaining balance for the high potential for unforeseen needs during a struggling economy. And what do I mean there? That applies both to really how we end fiscal year 20. We may need additional fund balance to finish out this year. And also how fiscal year 21 begins is critically important. If the economy continues to linger and struggle, we may need those resources for more than just cash flow purposes. It's important to acknowledge that and to preserve it as much as we can right now to remain agile and responsive during these uncertain times. And as I mentioned, Council could elect at mid-year if things look different and the outlook starts to improve. We could, after audit and after assessing first and second quarter, potentially bring back a requested adjustment, utilizing some of these reserves or even recognizing better performing revenues. Other reserves have been used appropriately to really leverage and lessen the burden on some of the general fund revenues during this fiscal year. What is shown in this chart indicates what is currently available today for us to use for this budget, and we are proposing in the first year to use most of the available funds and transportation reserve just to kickstart the Smart Shuttle solution. Now, that's not something I would say is sustainable. It's more for the first year, has a large amount of capital cost, but it was a way to lessen burdens on other revenues. Again, it's a hybrid solution we're talking about in a struggling economic conditions. It's not a one approach or one solution, meaning fund balance can't fix it all. It's got to be a combination of pulling back on some spending, utilizing your available reserves responsibly, and leveraging what revenues you can that do show growth, and then being really conservative and smart with the ones that are going to be limited or impacted by COVID. Capital Investment Program. So just a brief update on this. This is our recommended draft CIP for this year. What you will notice is your capital budget year for fiscal year 20, we have held any new capital spending. That was, again, another strategy, another tool in the toolbox for budgeteers to hold capital outlay as much as possible to really control and manage spending. Now, with that said, it does not mean we won't be working towards these projects. Again, I mentioned earlier, we will be working towards the projects that you have already put aside money for, to advance those, to prepare those, to get them shovel ready for when we want to build and construct, and to leverage any type of financial instrument to be able to pay those, or to tap into other reserves like Parkland Payment in lieu for those that could work for. Additionally, I do want to mention that for the projects that we had to shift out by 1 year, there were inflationary adjustments and modifiers applied to those appropriately since we are moving them out a year. So I want to thank you for listening and hope this overview allows you to focus in on really the next steps in your information needs and allows you to talk amongst yourselves about what do you value, what are your interests, and what are your budget policy direction for staff. Staff encourages council to put those policy interests on the table very early, allow each other to know what you value, avoid really getting bogged down in the minutia of talking specifically about specific items such as a $10,000 item in the budget. Focus on what do you want to accomplish with this budget. Stay committed to the policy direction, and that will help staff really make the quality adjustments and adapt this proposed budget to align with your collective interest for adoption. I would also encourage council to spend some time tonight first, perhaps trying to find an approach to talking about this budget and agreeing upon your process. I think that would be important. So Town Manager Page, before I open the floor for comments or questions, do you have anything you would like to add before we move it forward?
Yes, thank you. I mentioned a little bit earlier that we continue to try to put together information that helps you have that productive conversation and provides insights into specific parts of the budget that we certainly think need your focused attention, and we think you recognize that as well. So I'd just like to go over those very quickly. Hopefully it will help you guide your path as you discuss how you want to talk about that. So again, we mentioned the FAQ went out yesterday with everything that we had been able to compile. We continue to work on that, and we'll have a next version of answering those questions, as well as any additional questions that come out tonight or during your review that we will continue to add into that document. So please do read those answers to make sure that we're answering the questions that you asked. There were several questions in there that reflect different scenarios of the budget, and I will be the first to say, yes, of course, that is what we are doing here. I have put forth a picture for our town. I also recognize that much has changed since we started looking at the needs of our community, that there are dramatic differences to our current and future budgets on our whether we're talking recurring expenses versus one-time expenses. We've talked about just in some of those questions about different scenarios, which we plan to provide, but want your conversation to inform those scenarios. We've talked about the loss of not including reserves, and that is something that we are able to put together in some of that additional scenario modeling for you. We're also putting together some things that will help you better visually understand the budget, better able to articulate, both from my perspective and from your own, what the message points of the budget are, the points we're trying to make that help you understand it, and those that you speak to about the budget. We are putting together, it's a Nancy Emsley word, a crosswalk that takes those budget priorities that are outlined beginning on page 29 and really allows you to see where they are in some of those departmental budgets and whether they happen once or recurring in a different kind of format. Just another, it's the same information, it just is packaged differently. We all look at things, see things better in different ways. So we're putting that together. That will also better allow us to show you base budget and how that relates to revenues at these various tax rate scenarios. So we are already working on putting some of those things together. Some of those decision points about alternative scenarios are critically important to our future forecasting. So when you want to see how it affects future budgets, we really need to be deliberate in showing recurring expenses and one-time expenses. Pulling things in and out of a budget and not taking that into consideration it doesn't help us really look at those future forecasts. So that's why we want to really hear what's on your minds so that we do that best for you. We're also, we typically do this, we provide you some peer community comparison. Everybody is sort of always watching what everybody else does, recognizing that no municipality is the same or has the same factors and considerations as other municipalities. It is sometimes helpful to know what the rest of the landscape besides ours is and where those unique factors are and where we're the same. So all of that is in progress. We are working to have as much of that ready for your really robust discussions next week. Thank you, Mayor. I'm through.
Okay, I see Councilmember Rabati has a comment, and then I'd also encourage us, if you have questions about the last few slides that Jeannie went over, it'd be great to address those questions first before we get into the policy discussion. So Councilmember Rabati.
I just wanted to speak to what Jeannie said about letting each other know what's important to us and how we'd like to conduct the budget discussions.
Please go ahead.
I mean, if no one else wants to go first.
You go first, and then we'll circle back for questions.
Okay, so for me, it's really important that we make progress on the things that the citizens have indicated that they care about. So I understand that we are dealing with a lean budget year, but I'd like to think that we can still make progress on the projects that are going to enhance the quality of life in Morrisville. So one of those that I had circled on my copy was the dog park. I see that all spending on the dog park has been moved out quite a bit, and I wonder if we could discuss ways to put some of that back in there and make some progress on projects like that. So basically, yeah, that's my philosophy, is that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and save money by not doing things that we need to do to continue to move Morrisville forward as a great place to live.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for sharing. Councilmember Fender, you had a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor. With regard to, I think my question is a two-part question. So we're deferring any capital investment spending for this year. And in addition, we are not proposing allocating any funds out of the PPIL fund. Is that correct?
So yes, Councilmember Fender, we have held on new capital investment spending with your CIP. That's new spending. That doesn't mean we're holding on the spending that you've already allocated funds for the projects that are considered active, like Crabtree Nature Park, Morrisville Community Park Phase 3, and working towards the fire station. There are funds that were set aside for those types of things. And I think Airport Boulevard was the other one to make progress. For the parkland payment in lieu allocations, no, we have not specifically designated anything, but it is a reserve that does have an available balance that should council want to, within the course of the year or now, make an adjustment to advance something, as long as it was an appropriate use of that restricted reserve funds. That's something I think that we would need to hear from council.
Okay, then I have a follow-up question with that, specifically, as you mentioned, with the Crabtree Creek Nature Park. We already did the preliminary design that was presented to us. Was it just the last meeting? Anyway, I am wondering, because in the budget we say, in this budget report we say, town council will review design plans and consider proceeding on these projects as part of its continued capital investment plan and bond referendum discussions. So considering it's not in the capital investment plan and it's not in the bond referendum, do we have funds to even continue working on the Crabtree Creek Nature Park design?
So you have 500,000, I believe, was allocated for specifically for the Crabtree Creek Nature Park, and then another 700 was allocated specifically for Morrisville Community Park Phase 3, and those are all located within the same fund. You have allocated or encumbered funds currently for the design, and you have some remaining funds that are in excess of the difference. The other source of funds you could potentially tap for these projects is parkland payment in lieu. I would say you have a limited balance there depending on the cost of construction, but it's very important to get that design finished to know how much it's going to potentially be estimated for construction before you can designate a source or designate how much. Martha, would you like to add?
Yes, thank you, Jeannie. And once budget is done, and I think this is a really important point to make, we had a decision to delay the bond referendum ballot from 20 to 21 does not delay our continued discussion of CIP, prioritization, and what projects you may wish to explore in a bond referendum. And those discussions will further inform what you may want to use your other resources or other types of financing tools open to you so that it's part of a comprehensive plan. One of the things that we've tried to work through with the CIP is avoiding one project over another rather than a plan that shows how all things can be accomplished, but over time. And so the premise of not, aside from the budget balancing, is you still have much work in your policy development, including land acquisition with open space, and really knowing what your true priorities are before you start allocating pots of money to it. So that was the premise of those decisions, but all of those things remain available to you as you determine what your highest priorities are.
Okay, and I know we're not going to have the answer tonight, but I would still like to understand the status of how much funds are available or remain that were allocated for the two parks and what we can still do with those remaining. I'd like to know like how much we can still accomplish or needs to be accomplished with those remaining funds without having to allocate any more from parks payment in lieu.
Okay, thank you. I will put that question down for the FAQ. That's a perfect one.
Okay, thank you.
And provide you a breakdown.
And Ms. Hooks, if you could go back to the slide that shows the bar graph of them, you could also help us be informed that that's the programmed area. Is that 700 for the Morrisville Community Park and the 500 for the Crabtree Nature Park? So those are the green parts of the third slide are included in that number. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
So there is a lot of undesignated there, but we're still asking what's left of the 500 and 700.
Correct. That's
use.
what my understanding is of the question she's looking for.
Is that correct, Councilmember Fender? Okay, excellent. We have a comment from Councilmember Rao next in the queue.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment, and I'm going to hold off on my questions until I hear from everybody. But my main thing is, as I look at this budget, I'm really torn. I mean, I believe that you could look at some of the other areas like Wake County, for example, where they're not increasing their revenue neutral rate and they're not investing in new positions, holding off on capital expenditure. But I think it's important for us as a council and the public to realize that and correct me if I'm wrong, Town Manager Page, but Morrisville hasn't seen a lot of that revenue from tax increases that Wake County has done almost every year. So I think that's important for us to have that open and honest discussion with the public of the kinds of programs, the kinds of things that we're not getting, from previous years of Wake County's growth. To follow up on that, my thought is that, I think that my biggest concern about this budget isn't so much about, I don't want to be put in a position where, or I don't think any of us should be put in a position where, we're going to say, well, we're going to go above revenue neutral because we're going to fund a certain number of positions. I think the conversation should always be about, and I think Councilmember Rabati put it well, quality of life and also service levels. And if we have to go above revenue neutral to provide better service levels and make sure that we have a high quality of life, then I think that's worth discussing. I think, though, that we have to balance that with the business community and, making sure that, I tread a little bit cautiously in terms of just, not rushing into a decision. And then if growth comes back later in the year a lot better, we may have to go up the full, 3 or 4 cents. I mean, so just sort of, looking at it, the final thing I'll say is transportation. I think it's critically important for this council to show the public that we're really worrying about the future DOT situation. Every day that I read the paper and I watch the news, DOT looks like it's being dug deeper and deeper into a hole. Shortfalls, furloughed employees, $300 million off forecast this year. So I think a portion of the tax rate, as in previous years, should be used and allocated for reoccurring investments in transportation. Because when you go back to that slide, you look at the millions of dollars that we kept in the transportation. So imagine that number going up, which I think is what we need, especially when we hear about congestion, traffic, investing in transit. So these are the kinds of things I'm thinking about as I arrive at my decision, but I think it's all got to be about service levels, quality of life, and the investments we're making for the future, but at the same time balancing it with the current situation we're in, because it's an uncertain situation and you don't know what's going to happen on our monetary day. So I just wanted to get that out.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that. Appreciate it. At this time, I'm next in queue for a comment, and then we'll have Vicki Scroggins-Johnson go next. So in regards to budget policy as a whole, I am also in favor of continuing our progress as it is aligned in our strategic plan, which we've spent a lot of time and effort on. So I believe that this current budget as presented really aligns well with the strategic plan. In answer to what do I value, the sound investments that help keep our momentum and our commitment to the executing the recommendations of our adopted plans. We have a Parks and Rec master plan. We have transportation plan. So there's recommendations in there that are reflected in this budget that I want to keep going towards those. Let me get my glasses. And I value looking forward post-COVID. Now we need our reserves to grow so that we can be ready for opportunities as they come forth. As was mentioned by Councilmember Rao, I think it's important to continue our commitment to our roadway and transportation capital reserve. We did that 4 years ago, and that's been really important for advancing the roadway networks that are so important for us. I believe also sidewalks and our paving projects, now that we're ahead of and never have to do full depth reclamation, we are saving money by investing money. So those are some high level items that I think will help my fellow council members to see where I'm coming from, that I think we have some good momentum moving forward, and that this budget gets us a lot closer to where we want to be. And I'd like to acknowledge that Council Member Rabati has a question, but I'd like to hear from everyone first, if possible, with our comments, and then everyone will get a second chance. So we'll come back to you, Councilmember Rabati. I'll recognize Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson at this time, please.
unmute. Can everybody hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. This is Vicki Scroggins Johnson, and I have some comments about the policies that we're reviewing as it relates to our budget. Over the past year, we've had some really good discussions about initiatives and improvements in the town, and there's some very exciting projects going on. Sometimes we would see these projects without a price tag associated, if you will, and yet now, as we get towards the fiscal year 2021, we're starting to see more of the costs associated with those really brand new projects, not necessarily the ones that are in progress, but the ones that are brand new. And it gives us opportunity to really prioritize and reflect on that. Today, though, I'm seeing a lot of the news just like you, and my goal is to have as transparent a government as we possibly can and make the best choice for our town so that we're good stewards of money and also growing the town as we have been planning over the past several years. This is an exceptional year in that we started out really strong. We had a town reevaluation so that we could assess the strength of our town. We did so well in our reevaluation that the revenue neutral rate is about 32.5 cents to our current tax rate of 39 cents. So that means that the values of our property have really done very well. Now, every year, Morrisville has had significant growth, but we are a town that is going to stop growing over time and do some redevelopment. So our growth has really insulated us from having the need to increase our tax rate significantly, if at all, and to use bonds as a way to generate more revenue. But today is a different day. We're slowing down. There's potential losses in the future in the form of things that we can't control, such as sales tax. But I want to focus tonight on things we can control, such as the overall policy of how we want to spend the money for our future. We want to look at revenue generating areas such as tax rate ultimately, maybe not tonight, but we will be talking about in the next few weeks. The vehicle tax rate on your vehicle is also something that we can control, but unfortunately it is maxed out, so that's not a tool that we can use in this year's budget. And ultimately fees. There are some fees proposed in our budget that is presented, and we should look at those as possible revenue sources and make sure those are the right fees that we feel comfortable with. Now, one of the major questions I have for the staff is what would a budget that uses the revenue neutral rate of the property tax as the rate that we program in. So currently we have a rate that is 4 cents over revenue neutral, and that's to help balance that budget. But I wanted to be a little bit brutal and say, okay, what does it look like with neutral? Because we need to agree as a council what is important to us. And a revenue neutral budget would really force us to prioritize and have some discussion about what is the right level of risk and programming that we're willing to take. I'm a little bit apprehensive about the 4 cents about revenue neutral, but I need help in understanding what's important to us. So a few things that are important to me are roads. The budget didn't include the roads extra funding like we have in years past. And with the NCDOT now announcing that they're laying off a significant amount of their workforce, not only are road projects going to be put on hold, but the reviews of plans, designs, and associated things will be affected as well, which will affect how we progress and improve the town in the short term. The other area I'm really concerned about is staffing. I really want to protect our current staff and make sure that they don't have to be affected by a downturn of the economy. It makes me pause when I look at the new positions proposed, because the staff not only come with an allocation of salary, but they need budget money in order to provide the resources to work in that role. That might be equipment, that might be office space, it might be a lot of other things, but staff in and of itself is an area that I want to focus on for discussion. And then finally, the Chamber of Commerce was proposed as an area of concern for me. I think the Chamber does a great job. They provide the town of Morrisville some great economic development service, but are there other gaps maybe that in that area that we have needs for that we might want to consider? So those are the areas that I am looking at as I continue to review the budget, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very
Councilmember
much.
Scroggins Johnson and Council, I will capture your question about the revenue neutral tax rate and a budget associated with that as a part of that tax rate scenario modeling. So I'm going to include that as an FAQ question.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Councilmember Garamella with a comment.
Yeah, Jeannie, can you go back to that bar chart that you had?
The one for the reserves, or?
Yeah, for the reserves.
Okay.
Yeah, this one. Yeah. So I heard something that you said, like when you say like we have 1.35 programmed for the roadway and transportation, which one are those? And when you're saying undesignated 546, so can you tell me, what that means?
So most of the 1.35 was designated for, I believe it was Airport Boulevard, and then another portion was designated for, I think it was preemption traffic.
Correct.
Yes. The undesignated portion, that would be what we would be drawing on in this budget for capital cost with the Smart Shuttle.
Okay, so then that's where I have a question, is because when we kept that 1 cent, I'm understanding this money is that 1 cent that we save every year for these kind of projects, right?
The 1 cent equivalent, yes, sir.
Yeah. So I don't know if we ever talked that this could be used for Smart Shuttle. We were very firm with my understanding that this was purely for road construction projects, not for, Smart Shuttle kind of a thing. So I want to circle back, and if you can go back to those discussions, that would be helpful for me.
Okay, I'll add that to the FAQ to provide some depth of how the Capital Reserve Fund was created and what the scope outlines. I think it's a draw on what is the definition of transportation and mobility improvements that gets rolled up into both of those. I think that was the intent, but I'll add some definition for you in an FAQ.
Okay, and the other thing is, my understanding is we are going to allocate this money to the fiscal year 2021, right? But we are not going to get anything till next year, June, right? Before the Smart Shuttle starts. So are we going to pay like 1 year before without getting any of the services? Or technically it should start a year from June, right? So why are we putting the money now when we really won't even use it a month before 2021 June?
Town Manager Page, I'll defer to you for this.
Jeannie we'll put this in the FAQ as well.
Okay.
But for the first year of the Smart Shuttle, and if you go back to Ben Howe's presentation just about a month or 6 weeks ago, the upfront capital cost of, I believe, $450,000 is really related to the backbone of technology to support the Smart Shuttle program that has to be in place before it's operational. So yes, the capital investment is before 1 day of service. but we'll get you additional details for that.
Okay, yeah, so that's one thing. Okay. And then the other chart where you showed that 1 cent and 2 cents reduction, like the number that really got me was, can you also add on your FAQs, because this 1 cent now is equivalent to $620,000 compared to previous years, right? Like where it was, 540. So that would help to even Donna's question is did our tax 1 cent go over the last 5 years? The roadmap that if you can provide that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Certainly do that.
And also then the other thing I wanted to go back is same as what Vicky said. Like last year, we were presented with a budget which was revenue neutral, and then we were given the options of 1 cent and 2 cent. This time we are offered a budget with 4 cents, and then showing us a reduction of 1 cent and 2 cents. So it was done a different logic. So I think Martha has already said that she would be putting that together. So that would be helpful.
We will. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, like I like what Vicky has summed up, where right now I can't just ignore that COVID is not here. That we don't know the effects of it. We don't know what way will come up, and so many thoughts go into my mind when we're doing this budget. And it would be useful because I've heard that our town will not be as affected as other towns, but like if you can give us more insight as to why we think that way, that will be useful for all of us. And then in this present scenarios, with all the tech industries, no one is guaranteed a job. And I want to make sure that we do all the right balances, that we can ensure in our power that we don't have to let go any people from our staff. So that is my top priority, so that at least what I can't have, I want to make sure, the staff doesn't feel, and they work hard to move this town forward. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you for that.
In my experience in the budget world, when we deal with these types of economic situations, letting go of people is a last resort. Oftentimes what we put in play well ahead of that is really managing and controlling and pulling down spending and realigning a budget to what we anticipate revenues to come in. And I think a perfect example was in 2009 when we actually proposed a budget ordinance amendment mid-year and drew back on the budget on purpose. And that's a strategy we can employ. The other one, before you ever lay people off, is if you have vacant positions, oftentimes you'll find a strategy is to freeze those vacant positions and try to find means to continue to deliver the same quality of services you can as best you can to mitigate. So those are just some of the common tools that might get used before we would ever lay or furlough people. And we did not do that in 2009 recession. We did freeze vacant positions, however.
Okay, thanks.
And this budget is designed such that the 9 new positions on January 1st, they're automatically in place to go or not go. So you've already proactively designed that to make sure that we are insulated from any kind of downturn.
That was intentional, yes.
Yep. Next comment is from Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, please.
Thank you. Jeannie, you just left off at a good place to start. I have a little history from 10 years ago and how painful that was. And I will tell you, I am proud of many things over these past 20 years. But right up there, close to the top, is the fact that we never laid anybody off in the recession 10 years ago, and many other organizations cannot say that. So that I'm very proud of that. It was not easy though. Those were tough and lean days. But anyhow, A couple of questions, and then I do want to talk about where my interests lie too. First, I want to comment on Martha's points about bringing back some additional views of the budget that'll be helpful. I think that is going to be really important. And Satish brought up a good point. In the past, we've always viewed the budget from a base budget and then added to it. So going back to how we have viewed the budget in the past, doing it in that manner may help, and that will bring a different angle to how some of us view the budget. So I appreciate all those efforts. So as part of my comments, I think it really, I know several of us have said it and staff has said it, we've all had to do a major pivot over the last couple of weeks and now months, and we've had to shift because our world has shifted under us. Because of COVID-19, things are very different. So it is critically important that we all be very flexible as we move through this budget process. And I think the budget that we do adopt needs to also have a great deal of flexibility built into it, and you are already doing that. So that's important to me. Before I talk about all my other interests, and I've got a couple of them, I think it's really important as we each are talking about our interests and what's important to us, to really remember that we have a lot of very common interests. And I think it's really important that we all remember that we're all here because we want to do the best for our citizens. We want to improve the quality of life of our citizens. We're here to provide the services that our citizens need first and foremost, and then the services that they desire or want. And I know all 7 of us and our staff have that same common interest. And so hopefully that will make, if we keep reflecting on that and remembering that, it will help as we talk through the different interests that each one of us has. So I just thought that was really important to say. I've got a whole lot of interests, but I'll just hit on some of the top ones that are really important to me. And these are not in any order of importance, but taking care of our current employees needs to be a priority. We have come far just recently in making sure we are taking care of our employees. I don't want to lose momentum in that regard. Our staff are the ones that perform the services day in and day out for our citizens. And so we need to make sure that we take care of our current employees. The level of service that we offer our employees the level of service we offer our citizens is really important to me too. And Jeannie was really good about talking about the continuity of services. I want to stay ahead of the game too. I don't want to lose progress that we've made. But having said that, I think it's really important to understand what that means financially, and then how much more we can add. What new services can we add? And like Councilmember Rouse said, that's going to be a balance. But I don't want to lose the level of service that we're providing today that our citizens need. And then when I look to what we're funding in the budget, the pursuing funding of more projects and one-time funding items is important to me, whether that's maintenance or whether that's, I would even throw in there the funding to our reserve funds to make sure that, and several of us have talked about the fact that the Transportation Reserve Fund is going to be skipped in this budget. I think that's important too, but I would say those other reserve funds too. We're not funding to any of them. So the one-time funding is important to me versus the reoccurring expenses. and the adding maybe of a lot of additional staff, that gives me great pause, because once I approve a position, once council approves a position, I take it to be a position on staff that's here for the duration. I don't want to have to, because I haven't done it in all the years I've been here, ever have to lay anybody off. And so that makes me nervous as we're moving forward in this new uncertain world that we're in. So anyhow, so one-time funding over reoccurring expenses, and then and this is just overarching, and several of you have said it too. I am very mindful of what this budget means to our citizens, and the shifting of the burden to our citizens in the ad valorem tax rate, because our other revenue streams are not there for us today. So I'm very mindful of that, and I want to make sure that our citizens can financially tolerate and afford wherever we land. And I've already said this, I am willing and open to a above revenue neutral tax rate, but there's a there's a sweet spot there, and I don't know what it is yet, and I need to hear from our citizens too. That will be helpful to me moving forward, because once we set this tax rate, there's no do-overs. It's a tax rate that's set now, and the bills go out, and the citizens and the business community are expected to pay those bills. And in this COVID-19 world, that gives me great pause. So that's all. Those are just my overarching general observations and interests at this time.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I believe that everyone's had a chance to comment at their high-level interest at this time. Okay, Donna, I thought you started earlier.
Mayor TJ, I only had asked a question. I haven't had a chance to comment at all.
Okay, then I apologize. I recognize Councilmember Fender, and then Ann Rabati was next in line with a question after that. So, Councilmember Fender, please go ahead.
All right. First, I wanted to thank Jeannie and Town Manager Page for presenting the Town Council a budget that is conservative and already includes a lot of the considerations and impacts coming out of the COVID-19 situation. I appreciate that you've listed out on pages 39 and 40 the items that are being deferred, that we're no longer doing because of trying to balance the budget, and that we're not allocating any additional funds into our capital reserves. And I believe, Town Manager Page and Jeannie would not put this budget forward if they did not believe in it and weren't 100% behind it. So that being said, what's important to me? What's important to me is keeping Morrisville moving forward. I understand that with the COVID-19, it does provide, there are some implications where our sales revenue will be less than previously. However, I see this as a blip and nowhere near the financial crisis we had in 2018. And I believe that Town Manager Page has included those considerations in the current budget. A couple of things I wanted to point out is that what this budget presents is a 2.5 cent decrease to our tax rate. Some people talk about increasing taxes, that we're increasing taxes, and it will increase taxes for some people, but it will also decrease taxes for a lot of people out there. There are many residents and property owners, developers that have purchased property within the last 2 to 5 years whose evaluation will be very similar to exactly what they paid. So for those individuals, their property tax bill, with this 0.365 rate, their tax bill will actually decrease. So I believe we need to keep that in the forefront of our mind in our messaging to the public, is we're not necessarily increasing taxes. We are decreasing the tax rate. And for some people, it will increase their tax bill. My tax bill will increase. I've been in my home 7 years. But I think we all need to keep in mind that nobody buys property thinking their property value is going to go down. We don't do that. Every one of us would be renting. People and investors buy property with the full knowledge and with the hope and expectation that that property value is going to go up. Everyone wants to have the, retrieve the benefits of when they sell their property, of the equity and the value that's increased, but no one wants to necessarily realize the value, their property value increase with their tax bill. And I think the other thing to keep in mind here is with what Martha provided us in the FAQ. In 1992, the tax rate was 66 cents. Upon reevaluation, it went down to 60 cents. In 2008, there was another revaluation. The tax rate went down again to 0.467. And in 2014, it went up to 0.39. So over time, as our town has grown and property values have increased, past town councils have steadily decreased the tax rate over the past 28 years. And we've been able to do that because our tax base has been increasing at such a phenomenal rate. But we are nearly built out, and we have also denied the citizens a lot of amenities over the past few years that we could have otherwise provided them had we not gone, if we had just gone to 1 cent over revenue neutral. The senior citizens could possibly already have a senior center. The residents could possibly already have a dog park. So considering that this budget already considers the implications of COVID-19, I don't think we need to be scared and pull ourselves back anymore. We need to keep moving forward. I mean, when I decided to run for this office last year, it wasn't because I want to be county commissioner someday or state representative. It's because I care about Morrisville and the quality of life. And I felt like a lot of residents do, that the past town councils had not been listening to the residents. And in my campaigning, I knocked on hundreds of doors and talked to hundreds to thousands of people. And our residents want investment in our roads, and they want investment in our parks. And I think it's time to listen to the residents more. I realize it's a balance, but we've got to start investing in our town. We have run so lean for a long time. And, you know, in the past, maybe that was the best that and what needed to be done, but we got to start looking to the future now. And I apologize. I know that went long, but this is important. And it's important to me. And if this costs me the election next year because someone, you know, wants to crucify me saying I want to increase taxes, then so be it. I believe this is the right thing to do. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. So as I said earlier, we wanted to give everyone a chance to comment, and then we were going to circle back again. And it was a while ago, I believe, that Councilmember Rabati had a question in the chat box. Councilmember Rabati?
I did have a question, but first I would like to resoundingly say me too to everything Donna just said, because I think that was brilliantly said. I was trying to get there earlier, Donna, but you nailed it. So, you know, me too, what she said. Okay, I did have a question. Oh, okay. So, Jeannie, could you help me to understand what not funding the reserve accounts will actually mean in terms of, because I think I understand that we put aside reserves and we're saving up money to pay for certain projects. Like we might put money in the transportation reserve to fund the 54 expansion. So if we don't do that this year, is that something that we then have to double down on next year? Like, could you help me understand what the budget implications are for not funding the reserve funds this year?
So two things there. Not funding them this year, you could consider it a delay until mid-year, until you've had time to see how the economy might react, and after your audit, you have really an accurate accounting of your unassigned fund balance in the general fund. And this is something that the town of Morrisville Town Council has done in the past, is recognize that there were reserves in your unassigned fund balance above your policy, and they diverted that money to capital reserve funds. So that's one thing you can do. I would say that if we aren't able to do that, it does strain what I call new revenues in the future. And it means that you are going to be forced with a decision of putting aside monies for the future versus maybe using that new growth in revenue for something else in operations or other projects. So it just forces a decision to be made, or it forces you to make a decision in the future to appropriate reserves from that fund balance. Hopefully that answered your question there.
Yeah, that did answer my question. I have a follow-up question though.
Okay.
Okay, so we have, you may have already answered this, but so there are significant projects this year that I see on pages, I'm sorry, I really did just have it. The pages where it shows the money that we've already spent, and then okay, so it's on page 60, where we have a lot of projects on this list under capital improvement, capital investment programs that I do really care about, but I'm sure that some of these projects we would be able to make progress on with available funds. So could you just briefly, like, just go down the list and tell me, that you can put this in the FAQ if you want, but could you just go down the list and tell me which of these projects with nothing in the FY 2021 column are we actually stopping all progress on in 2021, and which ones will we still be making progress on? Because, like, for example, under Parks and Rec, I see the Crabtree Creek Nature Park, but you had already said we would be able to make progress on that in the coming year, even though there was no budget allocation for it. So could you help me to understand what we're actually is coming to a screeching halt and what is still going to be progressing forward, but without the budget allocation.
So overall, none are coming to a screeching halt. There are funds that exist for every one of those projects that allow us to move things forward and get them prepared. I'd say with the caveat that public safety, it's changing as compared to what it was originally designed for, but that's because new information came along that forced us to make adjustments and shift a bit. But we're still working for the same intended purpose of providing public safety effectively and improving our response times across the community. But I'm confident in saying that staff is capable of moving all of these designated projects forward, and in some manner for the ones that actually don't have any funding associated with them, such as Town Center, your policy discussions will continue. That's progress. That's important progress to get us to the place that we need to have conversations about developing future capital investments with really realizing a town center. I'm gonna pause there because I think I hear Town Manager Page. Did you have something to add?
No, I don't. I think that you're exactly correct. And I can't emphasize enough that a pause in dollars in that category does not pause your prioritization work, your policy development work that will just continue to inform what you want this chart to look like in the future.
So, for example, Martha, like affordable housing, there is no money in the column for prior years. There's no money in the capital budget. What type of work, what type of progress would you say that we'd be able to make in an area like that, where there's, on paper, it looks like no money for anything?
So two things with that particular example. One is council did fill out a policy interest form to share with each other how you were viewing that topic. Secondarily, for that item, council did engage and receive a external consultant's report that outlined 3 options of programs that council could consider implementing. And that discussion of that plan or policy document has not been undertaken yet by council. Which of those options, all 3 of those options, which priority, those are the things that could continue that would then inform future budget and CIP discussions.
Okay, thank you.
And I would add, just for clarification purposes for everyone, but budget adoption is not the only time that council sets policy direction or appropriates dollars to accomplish things. You as a council have the authority throughout the course of a budget year, through the performance year, to make appropriations, what are called budget ordinance amendments, to designate for capital project ordinances, grant projects, or for appropriating additional dollars in the general fund at any time, as long as those funds are available or we can project or foresee the realization of revenues to offset the expenses to keep the budget balanced. But it's not a one-stop shop. You have the flexibility, not just past the adoption of this budget, but into the performance year. I hope that makes sense. Okay.
Okay, thank you all for sharing. We've all had a chance, and we're going to take a break in a moment. I just want to kind of piggyback on what Councilmember Rabati was asking about if we don't invest now this year, how does that affect future years? And I'll read right out of the budget report on page 27. Where it says further delaying staff and operational needs this year will only exacerbate the ability and difficult decision making for future years. These needs will not go away if we ignore them this year. So it might not be double dipping, but it puts us in a position if we don't invest now in a level way that we might have to spike investments later to do some catching up or make the investments necessary to meet our residents' expectations and needs. So right now it is 7:24. I think it's now is a good time to take a break, and then we'll come back at 7:35 and continue our discussion.
All right, thank you.
So please reconvene at 7:35 and announce your return in the chat box. Everyone, please silence your microphones. Thank you. Okay, this is TJ Cawley, and I'm going to bring the work session back to order at 7:35 p.m. So we're having further discussion on next steps and information needs. I want to make a short comment about that. I would like to state my thanks and appreciation for the dedication and effort which came from the entire staff for this bottom-up budget, which actually found a way to balance the need for fiscal conservatism due to the uncertainty caused by COVID-19 and the expectations of our residents and other stakeholders to continue on the path outlined in our adopted strategic plan to reach our potential as the best town to live in North Carolina. All our departments and staff have aligned their requests with the plan, and our budget team has professionally crafted a forward-looking budget which stays focused on the core services we need to provide our citizens and provide safeguards to assure our continued solvency if COVID-19 worsens. I appreciate the answers provided to the questions which arose as we each read this proposed budget, and I'm satisfied that it fulfills the basics required to keep Morrisville on course to thrive. I believe our residents and stakeholders have made it clear during the past 2 election cycles that they wish to go a little further and have indicated their desire to invest in a few other strategic priorities of interest beyond the base expectations outlined above. I am also a me too in Councilmember Fender's comments and Councilmember Rabati's echo as well. Our stakeholders have made it clear that mobility is a top priority for them, and with our delay of all CIP programs by 1 year, I believe it's incumbent upon this body to demonstrate our ongoing commitment to sidewalk construction, road paving projects, and the continuation of our full 1 cent allocation to the Roadway and Transportation Capital Reserve Fund, especially given the fact that NCDOT has indicated that their support is being delayed. The why is because we have years of work in our various plans, and yes, we are facing headwinds from the COVID crisis. But when you face a headwind, it is best to lean into the wind and keep moving forward rather than turning sideways and being pushed back. Our staff have found a way to be ready for the worst while keeping our measured progress toward our potential intact. I'm confident that their recommendation for new positions would not be made if there was any possibility that it would even remotely lead to layoffs in the future. So kudos and thanks for all of that. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the thoughts of my fellow council members of how we can be both cognizant of the challenges being faced by our residents and businesses while demonstrating our commitment to plans in progress and any other strategic priorities which they feel can benefit the town through investment in this year's budget. So that was a little bit long, but I just want to share those thoughts because I think that the budget as presented is a really solid place to start and that we can build on it. I'm a little concerned that people are thinking about moving back from the department requests that our staff has already weeded through and vetted so thoroughly in regards to our strategic plan going forward. So looking for anyone with comments or questions or more thoughts about how we can move forward with this process. We've already given staff some more things for their FAQ to bring back to us. We have a few more meetings in the future, but the more that we could put on the table now about what we value and what we're trying to move forward with, the sooner we can put this budget to bed and get it adopted so we can move on to other things.
Mayor, if I may add, staff appreciates the discussion that council has had tonight and the insight into your interest have been very valuable as we help you to move things forward. Staff's going to take really a listening approach at this point and hand it over to council to talk, really ask questions about your interest, find your common ground amongst each other, and we'll step back and listen to the remainder of the conversation. But we appreciate what you have shared with us so far. It's been very helpful and insightful to get inside your minds, your 7 individual minds. It will help us move forward. So with that, I hand it back over.
Okay, I'll recognize Councilmember Steve Rao, who has a comment, please.
Yeah, just a really brief comment. I appreciate everyone's insight today. It's been very helpful to me. And, the way I'm looking at this is that I first of all want to say for those in the public listening that, I went on a 10-mile run last week, and on that run, I was able to run by all the things that I had been able to vote on and support on this council. Church Street Park, the McCrimmon Bypass Extension, Northwest Park, ran by the MAFC, saw the new library. Man, I was tired. But what I'm trying to make the point is that we have been able to make a lot of things happen in Morrisville. So it's simply not true that we've been holding the tax rate down low. I think we've had to make some tough decisions. With that being said, I think there's more that we can do. My only concern is, can we do it all given where we are right now with COVID? And I think that there's just a little bit of uncertainty that I have about the future, just because right now these forecasts are showing, sales tax revenues down by 14%. But one thing we haven't spoken about is development taking a hit eventually, because there's more teleworking. People may not require as much office space. We don't know what's going to happen in the restaurants. So my take on it is first having a conversation of the service levels and what we can do moving forward. I'm fine with moving above the revenue neutral, but as Liz Johnson said, I want to make sure that I don't think we're doing our jobs if we don't tread with a little bit of caution, and so I'm not willing to make that decision tonight, but that's just sort of where I'm coming from, just so I can set the expectation. And Councilmember Fender, I think you were brilliant with having your vision, and I think some of the things that you brought to the table in terms of passion and sustainability and environment and preserving trees are wonderful. And I think transportation and sidewalks, Mayor Cawley, are absolutely important. So I think that those have to be factored into whatever final decision we make about the tax rate. But I'll just end with Councilmember Garamella's statement. I can't go to bed at night knowing that I made a decision on a budget acting like COVID-19 is over, because we don't know, and it's the hardest. It's just a very hard decision for us and for everybody. But that's going to be my only remaining comments for tonight, and I just look forward to hearing from everyone else, getting back these presentations from staff so we can, figure out how we're going to move forward.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. To your point about we can't do everything. Already not funding reserves, already not doing a bond, pushing out all CIP by a year. So we are already not doing everything. So it's a matter of how much we are not doing. We have accomplished some nice things in the past. Reaching our potential is about allocating resources and putting them in a budget. And that's really where we show our values.
I agree.
We actually budget.
I agree, but as a reminder, in 2012, we were told by Mayor Holcomb at that time, and it was a tough time, that if we didn't increase the taxes by, I think, 3 or 4 cents, that the wheels were going to come off the bus and the town would stop. And the growth came back faster than we thought in the fund balance, and we actually were able to do a lot of things. So I agree with that statement that we are holding back on things. I don't think it's a position that any of us wanted to be in. But I think at the same time, we have to, take a look at the entire picture and look at, where we can make those investments. That's all I'm saying. But, I maybe it's just a difference in how we approach things. But I just wanted to be upfront with the public of how I'm looking at this budget and, how with my colleagues hearing from where they stand. But, I remind us that we've been in this position before, and we all looked with caution and treaded with a little bit of caution. And I think the last 7 or 8 years have been great years in Morrisville. I mean, I want to meet, if citizens are thinking that we haven't done anything in Morrisville, when we get back to a normal, I would like to meet you for a cup of coffee at Town Hall and ask you why you say that. I'll end my comments this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, you had a comment.
So Councilmember Rao just rattled off not even a full list. He forgot to add greenways to his list. But anyhow, yeah, there's been a lot of progress from past councils. here in the town of Morrisville who have added to our citizens' quality of life. That's why we're rated one of the best towns, and that's why we have people flocking to live here, and houses don't stay on the market too long. Just a couple of quick little comments. I think it's really important every year when we adopt a budget that before we adopt it, we do our due diligence. We are stewards of the people's money. This is not my money. It's not council's money. It's the citizens' money. It's our business community's money, our residents' money. So it's there's nothing wrong with having robust and long discussions on all these things that matter, because they matter to our citizens, and we're each here to voice the issues and concerns and that we hear across the communities. So I think what you're seeing happen right here is due diligence, and I'm not blessing a budget after a couple of hours worth of conversation for sure. There's more questions to be asked and answered, and that's all good. That proves to the citizens that we're doing our job. I want to make sure that we talked in our FAQ, and Councilmember Fender just mentioned about the tax rate over the last 30 years and how the tax rate back in '92 started at 66 cents. I think without context around the tax rate, it's not real value. I shouldn't say not real value. That's not fair. But there's value in seeing where the tax rate was at any one year. But without understanding the value of what a cent was at that time, without understanding what the growth rate was at that time, without the context around each year, I think we lose a lot of more value into what those numbers meant. So, and I believe somebody asked that question, and Jeannie, that's a question to you. Did some other council member ask for more detail behind that? Is that correct? Am I
Yes,
remembering
ma'am.
that? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I believe it was
I asked.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson and Councilmember Garamella. So staff's going to work on, we noted, adding some additional detail in this information. It just takes a little time to compile and go back in history.
Yeah, I understand. And it's also important to remember what the growth rate was at the time too. We have been very blessed here in Morrisville to live in a community that has seen exponential growth and a lot of growth in our commercial businesses and our commercial part of town. And so that has been a blessing because it has helped us in all these years. But as I think it was Councilmember Scroggins Johnson said in her comments tonight, that we all know that we're in a landlocked community and that, you know, someday it will be redevelopment that is our driving our growth rate, not new development. So that's a good and important issue to think about and quite frankly worry about, because I've been worried about it for years, and I'm the one that keeps talking about how redevelopment, we need to put emphasis and keep our eye on that for the future. And then one last thing, I don't think I heard anybody here tonight say they didn't value the investments that we've made in our community over the years, nor did I hear anybody say they didn't want to continue investing in this community in this budget year. So I think that's really important that we not lose sight of that. And then just the last thing I want to say right now too, one of the lessons I learned coming out of the recession in the 2009 timeframe, if I had a crystal ball, the funding of one-time projects and the costs associated with those projects, whether that be road maintenance, whether that be, you know, building parks, whatever, the construction costs ended up being significantly lower during that downturn. And I wish that we had been positioned better to take advantage of that at the time. We would have spent our dollars more wisely. So earlier tonight, when I made my comments about how one-time non-reoccurring projects, and whether that be capital projects or you know, the items that we have in the budget, those are important and a priority to me, because I would, and again, nobody has a crystal ball for what we're going through right now. You know, if that's an opportunity that presents itself, I like to take advantage of the fact that our bid process will be more favorable to us and construction costs may go down. And then just the one last thing. I also didn't hear anybody saying that they're scared right now. I don't think anybody's scared. I think once again, we're doing our due diligence. We're making sure that we're asking all the questions that need to be asked for our community, so that at the end, when there's a consensus on this budget, that we can all stand behind it. And I say we all, because I'm hoping that we all will adopt a budget. We'll come to consensus on a budget, whatever that may be. It may be the one we're looking at right now. It may be one that's tweaked a little bit. But I think we're all doing our due diligence. Nobody's scared. Nobody's scared. There's a really bad situation out there right now, and that needs to be acknowledged. And the effect that it may or may not have on our citizens should be acknowledged. And I think you're hearing that come across in these discussions. And that's really important, that we let our citizens know we're not losing sight of what's going on out there. Even though we're all locked up at home, we're not losing sight of what they're going through. We understand that people are losing their jobs today, that people are getting reduced salaries today, and we're hopeful that that will end very quickly. But we're not losing sight of that, and that's really important to make sure that our citizens know we're out here, all 7 of us, doing the best thing we can do, and we're going to do. We're going to eventually come to consensus on a budget that we believe is important and good for all of our citizens. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And I would like to echo, we really want to try to be in position, if there is a downturn, to be in a position to have shovel-ready projects and take advantage of any opportunities that do come forth. So I would definitely echo that statement that you made. So thank you very much for bringing that to everyone's attention. Councilmember Fender.
I just wanted to acknowledge the past town council members and the work that they've done over the past few years. My comments are not meant to disparage anyone. Like Councilmember Johnson said, there was context with these tax rates, and I'm sure the past town council members did what they thought was best at the time, and there was exponential growth with the tax base, and which allowed the tax rate to be decreased over time. And I moved to Morrisville because of the greenways, and I took advantage of Church Street Park. You know, I've moved to Morrisville because of the quality of life. My concern is I don't want that destroyed. And I do believe Morrisville has done a lot for the residents, and we do have a lot of amenities. I think we could do a lot more in the future too. And, you know, I understand that residents and citizens are in some financial situations now. I'm one of those people that has a reduced salary for I don't know how long. I am definitely not for accepting this budget as is. I mean, there are some line items in here I'm not in total agreement with, and may want to see removed myself. So I want to apologize if I've offended anyone. That is certainly not my intent. I care about Morrisville. I will say there is still some frustration out there amongst the town residents. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I had a question. Since there's so much talk about property tax rate, I was hoping that we just stick to what we value and the things that we think are important to provide to the town, and if we can expand them during this time. Is there a possibility of going back when you're checking those past property tax rates to adjust them for inflation? Because if you put that modifier in there, I think that you will see that in real value dollars, people are paying significantly less than they have in the past, irregardless of growth or anything like that. I think that would be an interesting data point. And okay. And I'm looking for other comments in the chat box. I'm not seeing any at this time. I had one quick question. We are not moving forward with the bond referendum this November. Is there a line item in the budget which probably doesn't need to be there, or what is staff's assessment of things that are in the budget and whether or not they should stay in there, given the fact that we're not moving forward with the bond referendum at this time?
I'll take that one. Yes, there was approximately $300,000 associated with the bond referendum. Some of that was related to the ballot costs, and most of it was related to the preparation for getting together a bond referendum. So that is already one of those things that'll be on a reconciling list. But as I mentioned earlier, there's lots of things being talked about either this evening or as we're getting some of those FAQs, that it does help frame for Jeannie and I those alternative scenarios that council is interested in seeing. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And I hope that we don't go down the road of, okay, so that's 300,000 that we can use for something else. I think it's the needs that matter, and the property tax is the result of our discussions of needs and what our future holds for the town. So that's what I value, is putting the needs first, and property tax is a result of that, not the other way around. Okay. Does council feel like we could get some more information out to each other tonight, or do we feel like we've exhausted our questions and our discussion for right now? Looking for the chat box. Councilmember Fender has a question.
Yeah, I have a question. On the page where, page 42, where we talk about the tax increment reduction scenarios, I am curious whether we could, and I don't know if one of the other council members have already said this, but maybe using different words or coming from a different angle, but I'm wondering if it's possible to show a 1 cent tax reduction scenario, but with different items, like include in here, instead of the MPD traffic unit vehicles, we could include the $300,000 reduction for the bond referendum. I don't want to see the traffic unit personnel and that group being eliminated, but I would like to see if there's some other combination of items that would come up to this same amount that could be reduced.
Yes, ma'am. That is our intention with some of that alternative scenario modeling to show you some of those other ideas. We would just like to frame, rather than shooting an arrow at a bullseye, have some targets based on what you're indicating to us.
Okay, thank you.
So to that end, I feel that all the items on page 42 are important, and I would not be interested in taking any of them away, since we're talking broad brush. I see Mayor Pro Tem Johnson has a question. Mayor Pro Tem.
So Martha, the questions that you've just gotten tonight, and then of course the outstanding questions from the last go round, are those all going to be ready by next Tuesday, do you think?
Obviously, we want to get them ready before next Tuesday so that you have some time to digest them. We are going into a holiday weekend. Jeannie and I we typically will debrief tomorrow and figure out our strategy to get as much turned back around to you as quickly as possible. Does that help?
Yes, that helps. I want yes, because Councilmember Fender and I are on the same boat. I had previously asked about different scenarios for the 1 cent tax decrease too, because I'd like to see something different there as well, and for us all to look at, because I think that's important to know what other options there are, and then we may not like any of them and not do it, or we might like one and do it. So it's good to have options. So
yes, we will work on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I make one last comment? If there are additional questions after tonight, when would you need them by to make sure they're answered in time?
We asked for the first round of questions by a specific time, just so that we could get as many sort of structured and organized and out to you as possible. As you saw from our submission, some just take much longer to put together. So we weren't trying to pick and choose as much as get the ones that were straightforward and simpler to answer out to you. So that does not mean we've stopped working on those. What has happened since then, as council members have been looking at and reviewing the budget, we have gotten emails, which is incredibly helpful to us. So as they occur to you, and everybody's been great about copying the other council members so that you know what's being asked and what we're working on before you get that answer. So please continue to do that. I guess I would respectfully ask is, how do I put this the best way? As Jeannie perhaps mentioned, make sure that the question adds value and content to your discussion that helps everybody come together on the choices that you have to make and how you feel about something, versus than just a laundry list of questions, I guess is what I'm asking.
So questions that have value and substance and are going to move the conversation forward.
Yes, ma'am.
That's very fair. That's very fair. So, you know, thinking about the rest of this meeting tonight, there are, this is the time, I think, for everyone to kind of get out on the table what you have questions about, what you have concerns about, and making sure we all hear that, but making sure, more importantly, that our staff hears that. So if we haven't, I, for one, need a lot more information. I've already asked my questions, so I need that information before I can even move forward again. So I guess my comment to the group is, you know, what more do we need to put on the table so our staff can help us be better prepared, because I would think come next Tuesday, we need to kind of start moving forward on where we are on a budget.
So at the risk of overly influencing this conversation, I want to make sure that I haven't given an impression that ask your question tonight and never ask another question. I recognize and we understand that an answer we provide may create another set of questions. So it's not that we answered you and we don't want to hear another question. But if you have, I agree with you, if you have something on your mind, holding back now with staff or with each other does not help you advance your discussion. We are trying to make an effort to get as much of this information returned to you by next Tuesday, even if it's later in Monday evening or early Tuesday, and we can use some of our work session next Tuesday to review some of those answers if necessary. However, you have another work session next Thursday, and if we look at the timeline for our budget consideration, if council wants to consider other options, you would want to have some alignment in your thoughts and recommendations that allows the public to know what a final budget proposal might look like before you go into your public hearing on June 9th. So that means we have May 26th, May 28th, and June 4th that are all scheduled. So if we think about using that June 4th to really put together whatever that final package that council is willing to support, that you're talking to the public, it doesn't mean it can't change some more, but you don't want, and this council has never felt comfortable at upending the process after the public hearing. So I just encourage you to think about it in those terms. Jeannie, want to add anything to that?
No, I agree with you on that direction. I think that's very wise. The sooner you find your common ground with each other, the faster you get to that place that allows staff to move ahead and prepare that information prior to that public hearing, so people can understand what your collective position might look like and respond and react and provide you input.
Great, thank you, Jeannie.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Councilmember Rao, please.
Well, first of all, I want to responding to Councilmember Fender's statement, I just want to thank her for her passion, and I value every person on this council, and I think that's what makes this process great, is that we listen to each other and we bring our different sets of experiences. And I'll put this team against anyone in the state, but thank you for bringing some great ideas. With that being said, my biggest questions as I go into our next meeting, and maybe some of these have already been addressed, but as I look at the list, okay, one thing I would want to know is, and if you've already told us this, I apologize for asking again. When we look at public safety and the things that are being offered, and the unit personnel, unit vehicles, equipment, which one of those are absolutely critical for public safety? I know those are things, I know Town Manager Page wouldn't ask them if they weren't absolutely critical, but what could we live with? What could we live without? Could those numbers be tweaked a little bit? I don't think I'm doing my job if I didn't ask that question. In terms of road paving, I think that's absolutely critical for me because mobility is a big issue for us. And the other question is succession planning and space modifications. Maybe a little bit more detail on that. If you could point me to the right direction. If you've already provided this information, I don't want you to have to recreate that. I could just go and review it. And then, market pay for me is important because we're always talking about retention of staff. And so, Councilmember Scroggins Johnson mentioned that, we want to make sure that all of our staff feel like they're safe, employed, working hard. And I think this is the time where we've got to really make sure that we do that. And merit pay is something I think that I've been proud to support. So just those are some food for thought as I go in on this list. Maybe we come back and I say, look, I'm fine with all of it, but I would appreciate if you guys could get back and sorry I went over my time. Thank you.
Councilmember Rao, we don't have time limits. Thank you for
Okay.
sharing your thoughts.
Right.
I'm next in the queue for a comment. And I just want to put out there that once again, I think that this is a solid budget and that I would not take anything out of it other than the bond, which we're actually not moving forward with. Additionally, I think it would be important, as road paving was mentioned, that's $100,000. I'm also very much in favor of making sure that we're in a position to move forward with roadway and transportation projects. As noted, our undesignated PIL for that is going to be mostly eaten up by the Smart Shuttle, which is important to move forward. So if we want to have some funds available for upcoming projects, especially since contracts may be less expensive, that would be the time to pull the trigger on some intersection improvements, for example, which I think are really important and we've fallen a little behind on. So that being said, 36.5 is the proposed budget number, but there'd be an extra penny on top of that. So I'm hoping that people who are paying attention know that there's a possibility that 37.5 would be the final budget that would be thought of as appropriate when we go into the public hearing. So if people want to speak to that, we are here to listen. townofmorrisville.org/budget portal. Okay, Councilmember Rabati and then Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson, please.
Yeah, so I guess I just, I want to thank everybody for their thoughts. It's been an experience, my first budget discussions. So I guess I feel like we're still pretty far from consensus. The only thing that I think we all 100% agree on is staff as as certainly a priority. But I guess I'm just not really sure where we go from here or what, if anything, we've accomplished in this meeting. I mean, I know that we did get a chance to all ask questions, and that was very valuable. And I certainly had a million for Martha earlier this week. But I don't think I don't know that just talking one after the other is. I'm not sure that's getting us anywhere. I wonder if there's another type of, I don't know, communication, or I mean, I know we're really hampered by the fact that we're all in different places and we can't be together, but I'm not sure that this has been a super productive discussion. I think it's rather been a list of comments and questions. We might have learned a little bit more about each other's positions, but I don't think we moved the ball forward in terms of coming to an agreement on what to do about the budget. So I guess I would like some feedback on that from Jeannie. Is this what it always looks like?
So I would say, I've said this before, that staff is always listening to what council says, the nuances, and we are always looking and listening for where we can make connections and find and connect your common interests. So what we've heard tonight, we can actually, Martha and I can take this back and synthesize it, provide some context to show you where we actually are hearing some common interest. One of those is your staff is a priority. You've made that connection already. Another one is roadways and transportation are very important to you. And that might mean, okay, we need to find a way to put that transportation reserve back in. We know that we need to pull some of the funds from the bond referendum, but where do we repurpose that effectively? So those are just some small examples of things that we've heard from you that staff can effectively synthesize, pull together, and help you connect the dots. And yes, your first conversation like this, it is really like this, and it is putting it all on the table and letting staff do their job to help you through this. And we'll guide you, but you're going to lead us through the comments and the interests that you have shared tonight, and you will share once you get additional information and be able to state those positions and make some modifications and adjustments maybe to those positions after you've received information. Martha, you want to add something?
Yeah, a good or bad comment meant for Councilmember Rabati with a bunch of levity is what local government managers are often told is the hallmark of a good budget is a budget that nobody likes because everybody didn't get everything that they wanted. So everybody is unhappy because they didn't get everything they wanted, and that's when you know you've reached common ground.
I voted for a few of those, Martha. I know.
Okay, hey, as long as it always looks like this, man, you guys are getting some kind of fruit basket from me when this is all over.
I may need coffee.
And one other thing, sometimes discussions that you can have one-on-one or with two other council members are okay. And that helps you understand a little bit more of where they're coming from. So that's something that I encourage all of us to do over the next couple of weeks. And then we can share what we've learned from each other in these meetings as well. So that benefits everybody. Next person with a comment is Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson, please.
And you can call me Vicky. So,
okay.
So just a quick note for Councilmember Robati. I like to use the analogy of when you're organizing your house, you first pull out everything and you put it on the floor, and then you put it back carefully, and hopefully you have items left over that you can remove. So that's what we're trying to do, is take this lovely budget, unpack it a little bit, really inspect it, and then put it back together where everybody is comfortable of how that final budget is. And it's a little bit messy and it's a little bit uncomfortable, but I think we're well on our way. I've been really appreciating the FAQ that staff has been putting together and helping give it some substance and really understand it a little bit better. So with that said, I do think that we do have some adjustments in that future scenario, if you will, that we all are aware of, that bond cost, but there's another one that probably is a little bit hidden, and I want to bring this out, is the Morrisville Carpenter Road project was put on hold, and it was to the point that it was out for construction bid. And within that project was the Thornberry subdivision road improvements, specifically the access and the sidewalks that are associated with that. I believe in the original project for that subdivision, there was some mention that if the town expands Morrisville Carpenter Road, that there would be payment in lieu from the builder to support that driveway access improvement plus related sidewalks. Now that that project's on hold, it's a little bit kind of unclear as to who pays for those improvements now. Will the town go ahead and improve that section? Will we be asking the developer to make those improvements instead? How does that affect timelines? So I'm not clear, how that goes into this budget, but potentially we should put some money in for that project due to the access of the driveways and the sidewalks. Does that make sense, Martha?
Yes, ma'am. And I'll just add that Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson, and I appreciate the fact that she did ask me that question. So we are already in progress of gathering some of that information to address that and give you that information.
Great. Great. And then finally, the budget that we have here, I'm trying to stay as high level as possible, but we should not assume that everything in here is needed to be done on day one. I know that we've staggered some of the staffing positions to be at the 6-month point, but I'd really like to think about holding off on some of those, if not all of those staff positions right now, because of the uncertainty that we have. So when you're looking at the scenario with a revenue neutral kind of budget, take a hard look at those staff positions, and we can discuss this as a council about how we want to proceed in timing of adding new staff versus holding, and then maybe advancing some other one-time projects like Mayor Pro Tem Johnson said. Those one-time projects in a downturn sometimes are less expensive, quicker to do, better bids, that kind of thing. But staff positions are not one-time items. They are recurring items that will need additional resources for them to do their good work. So just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is from Councilmember Fender, please.
I have a couple of comments and then a question. From a high level, I don't, if for looking at the other scenarios, I don't want to see personally, I would not like to see anything taken out for public safety, especially the items in here that are to deal with traffic congestion, looking at intersection improvements, because I think that is especially important given the amount of car wrecks that we've had along Davis Drive. So I don't want to see any reduction there. And the same goes for the staffing, merit and market adjustments. I feel like that's very important that we keep those in there. And then along with that, the road paving projects, I don't want to see any reduction in that area as either. Well, the question I do have is around this network and security administrator. You know, I understand that it's for cybersecurity, but I just would like to know a little bit more about that. I'm wondering if we can defer that for 6 months or a year, because we obviously are doing something now for cybersecurity. So I guess my question is, why now? Why do we need this right now, starting July 1st? So I'd just like some more details regarding that position.
Okay, we'll add that.
Yep, that sounds like a good FAQ question. A couple of years ago, staff was able to put together essentially an FTE per capita of nearby towns. I'd be interested if that's not too burdensome to do something similar. Again, we're having lots of people talking about delaying positions or eliminating positions. I'm confident that staff wouldn't put them forth if they thought that they were at risk of disappearing in the future, and that we couldn't sustain them. But I think that will be an interesting data point to see how lean we are compared to other towns. And just like to bring it to our attention that although this position isn't being addressed at this time, at the retreat, we were given a choice of which of certain policy discussions could go forward in a meaningful way during the year. So I'd like to know that in the future we'll have capacity that we won't have to make those type of choices. We'll be able to do everything that's important to our residents in a timely fashion, rather than delaying and not having the staff capacity to do more for our residents. Thank you. And Councilmember Rao has a final question. He says, I promise.
Yeah, this is my final question. I forgot to ask it in my last question, but what would be helpful for, I think for my colleagues and I as well, at least for me, would be Are we going to get an update on our smart city assessment, where we are with that, and what we would get with the additional 150,000 that's being deferred? I just would like to get a sort of refresher. It's been a while since we've seen that, especially after COVID. So will we be getting a briefing of that from our CIO so we sort of know where we are and where we're going?
Councilmember Rao,
Go ahead, Martha.
The initial response to your question is in the FAQ that got sent out yesterday.
Oh, okay. I apologize for that.
And yes, Rick will be bringing forth a plan, but it will not be till after you adopt the budget.
Okay. Well, I'll go back and read the FAQ then, and then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
TJ had another question about in the added area of things that were deferred, there's the affordable housing. I was wondering, this is, I guess, an FAQ question. Can we possibly consider skipping another consultant and going right to the point of having a staff member just determine if there's 3 or 4 different providers who would actually use the money to actually get some affordable housing for staff or Wake County Public School employees, rather than getting another consultant, which I'd imagine would probably end up pointing us to 3 or 4 different providers. Second question is, we appreciated Councilmember Scroggins Johnson asking about Morrisville Carpenter Road, which is, we're very disappointed it's not moving forward. Does that have budget implications in this budget, or is that something that, so I guess that's maybe an FAQ.
So Mayor, we'll add that to the FAQ. It is a separate fund. It was a project that was designated for, because it's a grant project and it's a reimbursement grant, cash flow. It was an important factor here, which is one of the other reasons why it's important that you don't tap out or draw down too much on your fund balance reserves, because that's your cash flow ability that also helps some of these grant type projects as well. But I'll add that and we can provide more depth.
Yeah, because I have mixed feelings about that one, because the fact that it's not moving forward right away actually gives us a little more flexibility and a little more buffer. So we have more in our fund balance reserves. But if that project does get turned on real fast, that might put a little bit of strain on our reserves, which means that all the more important that we make sure that we keep our capacity and don't draw down those reserves. Yeah. So it's a mixed bag there, the fact that they're delaying it.
Any use of reserves, it takes time to build up that kind of reserve, and it takes actually good policy in place to maintain and sustain it at a level that is appropriate, so that it doesn't grow in an exorbitant manner and just sit there. Morrisville has an excellent policy that retains a good percentage and then also allows you the ability to make policy decisions to move it out and utilize it when appropriate, so that you don't draw down on it and you utilize it in a reasonable and appropriate manner. So we have an excellent policy that we've developed over the years. Right.
And I appreciate how hard it was for staff to recommend not adding to those reserves for a year, because as noted, it makes it harder in the future, a little less flexible. Okay, I'm looking for the chat box if anyone has any other thoughts that they want to unpack onto the floor so we can all inspect them together. To steal that analogy, now is a really good time for that. Okay, seeing none, if staff could once again go over our schedule for future discussions, our next meeting, etc. I think we're to that point, and I'll keep an eye on the chat box if anyone has any other thoughts.
Yes, sir. So your budget calendar, with the exception of the May 26th, which I've corrected that on all the online information, I just didn't go back and correct this slide. This is your calendar for reviewing your budget. You have a number of work sessions at your disposal. Again, staff encourages the type of conversation that you've had tonight is the same type of conversation, so that we can keep making those connections at your next work session on the 26th and then on the 28th, and then targeting that June 4th meeting to really allow staff to pull it together and hopefully make those final consented decisions of what your budget might look like, so that the public can react to it, your collective decisions on the June 9th public hearing. The budget portal is going to stay open and through June 10th. We've been receiving some comments. That's always good. And we, like I said, we will try to collect the other types of comments that are coming through social media as best we can. And then we have a proposed adoption on June 23rd. So with that said, again, continue this kind of conversation that you've had tonight. We do draw conclusions and are able to synthesize this information. It might look a little scattered right now, but as Councilmember Scroggins Johnson said, we're going to help you organize it so that you all feel like you get something from this budget. There's never one solution. It's finding the solution that works for the collective whole, that works for the good of this community, that you can all proudly stand behind. That's all of our interest here, elected officials, staff, and everyone.
Okay, excellent. So once again, to reiterate, www.townofmorrisville.org/budget portal is the main place to give feedback, but also which other social media? Is that our main Facebook page and Twitter?
So Facebook also will have the post, and we have frequent Twitter items that we're putting out there periodically as council discusses to just re-energize the public and point them to the budget portal and the budget pages that have the collective information. And then of course your videos for your virtual meetings will also be posted online that are very helpful for those that may have missed them.
Okay, thank you very much. The addition of social media being reported back to us is a nice addition this year. So thank you very much to staff for making that happen. Okay, at this point, we are ready to adjourn. Our next meeting will be at 6 p.m. next Tuesday, the 26th. It's going to be a regular meeting. There'll be a work session that'll be part of that for the budget, but it'll be one of our regular meetings with lots of other items. So that agenda is always posted generally the Friday before, if not earlier. I would now entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting tonight. I would recognize Councilmember Scroggins Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. I recognize Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. If you could please reply to Town Clerk Eric Smith as he does a roll call vote on that motion.
Councilmember Robati,
Aye.
Councilmember Garamella,
Aye.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Fender,
Aye.
Councilmember Rao,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Pauley.
Aye.
The motion to adjourn passes unanimously.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening and a nice holiday weekend. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.